We have a lot to discuss in today's video. Ilia Topuria will be stepping in to save UFC 317 on International Fight Week, but against who, we don't know yet. However, we do know that Ilia Topuria is going to be fighting at UFC 317, which has needed a new main event after Duplessis versus Chimaev fell through. That was the original plan. Also in today's video, I want to discuss Chael Sonnen seems to think that it's going to be Tom Aspinall versus Cyril Gane instead of Tom Aspinall versus Jon Jones next for the heavyweight interim belt. I don't know how much of that is true. However, Ariel Helwani, who isn't on the screen right now, Ariel Helwani seems to agree that this might be the case because Tom Aspinall has announced that he has a fight soon and there's going to be an announcement soon. And Ariel Helwani says that UFC is not to blame and they're no further along in terms of finding the matchup of Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall or making that matchup happen. And apparently it's all on Jon Jones right now. So I'm going to get to that at the end. I'm going to start with the Ilia Topuria news. We're going to start with some good news. Ilia Topuria will be fighting for either the undisputed or the vacant lightweight title at UFC 317. Everything points to Islam Makhachev defending his belt against Topuria. Otherwise, he will have to vacate it so that Topuria can challenge for it against Charles Oliveira. Now, I saw this news earlier yesterday. However, I didn't really know how legit it was. I know that this guy that reported it is also the guy that, has a bit of a connection to Ilia Topuria. People are saying he's like the Spanish Brett Okamoto or something like that. So, he announced that Ilia Topuria was going to be going on JRE before it ever happened and before there was even a picture of it happening. So, this guy has some level of credibility when it comes to Ilia Topuria news in the past, but I didn't quite believe it yet. But then, Ilia Topuria tweets out that the training camp has begun. UFC 317 is 9.5 weeks away. Ignore the absolutely casual comments down here asking if it's going to be McGregor. Like, what the hell is going on? But now that sort of makes it a little bit more legitimate. And then Ariel Helwani even discussed this as well. As discussed on the show today, Ilia is going to fight on June the 28th. The question is, will it be against Islam Makhachev for the 155-pound belt, or will it be against Charles Oliveira for the vacant title? We should know soon, but he should 100% be on there, and 100% he should fight for gold as well. We got to talk about this, but Charles Oliveira also has been posting this on his Instagram. The return. He's getting ready for a comeback as well. On the same day that Ilia Topuria announced that his training camp has begun as well. So I feel like they are legitimately waiting to see what happens in Belal Muhammad versus Jack de la Maddalena. And if Belal wins, Islam Makhachev's not going to fight him because they're both Muslim. And I guess that's just how it works now. All good. They're a team. Everyone's a team but you. It's all good. But Islam Makhachev's not going to be fighting Belal Muhammad. I honestly feel like Islam Makhachev might actually fight Belal Muhammad because the only one that really strongly talks about the fact that they're not going to fight each other is Belal Muhammad. Now, Islam Makhachev has said before, I know they're on a team. The Muslim guys, they're on a bit of a team, even though they're not. They are sort of like an unspoken team because they believe the same thing. I know it's something like, I don't want to fight my friend. Belal Muhammad did like a training camp with him. You're not lifelong. This isn't a Merab and Aljo situation. And even then, I wanted to see that matchup at the time of it when it should happen. You know what I mean? But instead, we waited and Merab got his own way and Aljo got his own way as well. But that was like a long, long friendship of main training partners. But I think Islam Makhachev is genuinely thinking now, regardless, I'm going to fight Belal or JDM. Belal constantly talks about the fact that him and Makhachev aren't going to fight each other. But he says it in a way where it's like, I'm so happy. I'm happy that we get along and I did a training camp or two with him. So therefore, we're not going to fight each other anymore. We believe in the same thing. But Islam Makhachev, I've always noticed this about Islam Makhachev. He speaks about Belal Muhammad as some kind of inconvenience. Like he doesn't want to fight him because they believe the same thing. And I get that, there's some kind of brotherhood in that sort of situation. And their fan base, I guess he doesn't want to divide the fan base amongst them when he wants the fan base to be in unity with all of them. It's a sad way to go about the sport, but that's just what they do. If everyone did that, we'd be in chaos in the sport. So All the more reason not to have a lot of them as champs. Just saying, we'd have no more super fights, let's be honest. But either way, Makhachev talks about Belal as some kind of inconvenience. If JDM wins, Makhachev's moving up. I think even if Belal wins, Makhachev's going to want to move up and fight him. And they'll do Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Sean Brady. And book Usman versus Buckley as well. Like, they've got fights to make in the rankings at 170. There's no clear-cut contender. It was Shavkat Rakhmonov, but he's going to have to fight again. I'm sorry, that Ian Gary performance was weak. And I think he lost a ton of momentum after that as well. Because I don't see any hype on Shavkat Rakhmonov anymore. So, it's very likely going to be Ilia Topuria versus Charles Oliveira. Will Makhachev vacate the belt? Will it be announced that Makhachev is moving up to fight at 170? And then they'll make some kind of interim belt for Ilia Topuria versus Charles Oliveira. That might be the way that they've gotten Oliveira and Topuria to agree to this. Because they both said they want their next fight to be for the championship. And for a while I was thinking, shut up and fight each other. But this is a way to appease both of them in terms of both of them fighting for a championship. So Arman Tsarukyan's going to have to go to the back of the line, unfortunately for him. I was even thinking for a second, just book Makhachev versus Tsarukyan for the June card and save the day with that, because I still think it's a great matchup. But now it's looking like we're going to get a Gaethje versus Pimlet. I think they're going to do Poirier versus Holloway 3. For some reason. I don't like it, but they're going to do Poirier versus Holloway 3. And I also think they're now going to have to do Arman Tsarukyan versus Dan Hooker as a matchup for Arman Tsarukyan. So Arman has really been done wrong. However, you could argue that he did the whole company wrong and the fans and Islam Makhachev wrong when he ruined lightweight forever by pulling out on the day of the fight against Islam Makhachev at the start of this year at UFC 311. This is good news. We're getting something. I really don't like the fact that it took the card to nearly come to a disaster for us to finally get this lightweight thing in motion, because I do wonder if Duplessis and Chimaev was still going to be the headliner of UFC 317. Would we even hear this news? Would we still be waiting for some kind of an announcement? And how long would we have been waiting for? I do wonder that. I really do. Because again, Duplessis Chimaev falls through, and it wasn't really a fight in the first place. Even DDP tweeted out something like this. He said the fight was never signed. Like, I'm ready when I'm ready. I fought in February. I'm not ready for June. So the fight wasn't ever on. So DDP is probably one of the first champions to pull out of a fight that never even happened, or never even got signed, or never even got confirmed. The fight is definitely going to happen, and that was the idea, that they would make DDP versus Chimaev, but they hadn't decided on a date yet. So maybe Dricus du Plessis is just going to be like, listen, July or August, I'm going to be ready to fight Chimaev, and maybe we won't see Chimaev versus Baralho at UFC 317, but maybe there is a world. I don't want to get too hopeful, because we never get what we want. I'm still not out of the idea that maybe we might get Makhachev versus Topuria, because we always hear Khabib saying that we're not going to do Makhachev Topuria. Some coach of Makhachev, will like mention that they're not going to do Makhachev versus Topuria, and other people in his team and around him, even his management, will suggest that they're not going to do that. And even Ali Abdelaziz was pushing for some fucking bullshit Makhachev versus Gaethje matchup. So I don't want to get my hopes up too much. But we could be looking at UFC 317 in a 1 in 100 chance, or a 1 in 10 chance. Let's be more realistic. We could be looking at Islam Makhachev versus Ilia Topuria in a main event, and Chimaev versus Baralho in the co-main event. I can only hope. But Charles Oliveira also saying that he's coming back and the return is on kind of tells me that it could be Charles Oliveira versus Ilia Topuria as well, with Makhachev moving up to 170. So, crazy. Still waiting for someone to tell me why Ilia deserves a lightweight title shot. I understand the Makhachev argument, and there's a lot of people online that are like, we don't want this about Ilia Topuria versus Makhachev. I really want Ilia Topuria versus Islam Makhachev. I understand where Makhachev was coming from when he was going off about, they're going to say that I just beat featherweights my whole career at the end of it. I don't want to be the lightweight champion that just constantly defended against featherweights, and no one's going to give me any credit. And I understand where Islam Makhachev's coming from with that, because I would have done that if he would have took the fight and won. You know? I'm just being honest. I'm going to be honest. I want the matchup, Ilia Topuria, Islam Makhachev. But when Makhachev's career is said and done, I will be the guy looking at his resume and going, former featherweight, short notice Moicano, former featherweight, old man Poirier, took him 5 rounds. I'll be the guy saying that. So I understand where that whole team's coming from, but I also want the super fight. So yes, I'll cope if Ilia loses, okay? That's just how it is. But I also want to see the fight in the first place, and I do think Makhachev would win. I'm leaning towards Makhachev anyway, but it is the most compelling matchup in the sport right now, other than Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall. Should I immediately get into that topic? So shout out to Ilia Topuria first of all. I'm going to move on, but shout out to him. He got like the call, I guess, from the UFC. Like, listen, kid, we wanted Duplessis Chimaev. That would have sold the card on its own. And I do want to talk about that as well, actually, so I'll mention this. It feels like the UFC is doing the bare minimum to get by. So because we don't have Duplessis Chimaev, now we need a stacked card. Or now we need a replacement. Why can't we have multiple big fights a card anymore? It feels like they're intentionally stalling out matchups so they can like evenly disperse them on a monthly basis. Not to give us everything and sell 1 million pay-per-views, but to give us like something to see us over until the next month. So if Duplessis were to fight Chimaev at International Fight Week, would we not see Topuria fight until July or August? When he's already been out since October? It feels like the UFC is allergic to putting on massive cards, but now this has forced their hand to put on this massive matchup with maybe a Topuria versus Oliveira. I reckon it's going to be Topuria Oliveira for an interim belt, and it might just be announced as they're fighting each other, and we won't really know the status of what belt's going to be on the line, and then they'll maybe see what happens at 170, announce that Makhachev's going to fight the winner, and then in the middle of the training camp for Topuria and Oliveira, then say, oh, now the interim belt's on the line. You know, maybe like 6 weeks out or however many weeks out it would be after UFC 315. But I just don't like how the UFC's doing that. Oh, now you can't carry a pay-per-view with one good fight at the top of it. Now we've got a different big fight to be at the top of it. I'm happy, and I'm really happy about this news. And I shout out to Ilia Topuria for stepping up. But come on, UFC, man. It shouldn't take scrambling to fix... You know what I mean? We shouldn't be scrambling for these things. Just put them all on. There's so many champions in the sport. There's so many top-level fighters. It feels like they want to be more active than the UFC will let them be. And I don't know why. I have a rumor. UFC's signing with Netflix, aren't they? They could hold something on the line for Netflix when it comes to this massive $1 billion a year deal that they want to sign with Netflix. Where they might, and this is my only idea for why the UFC is pulling this move with these massive matchups at this time. They might want to have a future Topuria Makhachev matchup in their back pocket, and also a Jon Jones Tom Aspinall matchup in their back pocket for when they go into these negotiations with Netflix after their ESPN deal ends, which I believe is going to be soon this year as well. They might be saying, listen, Netflix, we want this signed. You're going to give us what we want out of this. And they're going to hold it as sort of leverage. Like, listen, you're going to make this signing and we're immediately going to announce Jones Aspinall MSG, or we're immediately going to announce Topuria versus Makhachev, and then maybe McGregor will come. I don't want to get into the McGregor stuff because he just called out Chandler again. But either way, maybe they're using this as some kind of leverage and saving super matchups so they don't get left with shit. You know what I mean? Either way, we've got to discuss this as well. Chael Sonnen. Now, I don't ever believe Chael when he talks like this. When Chael has some crazy take that no one's heard yet. You know, Chael's the first to break the news. I don't like using Chael Sonnen as a source, but Ariel seems to confirm this as well. So I'm just going to let Chael yap, okay, as he does so well.
Because I am fully aware of the rumor. Now, you guys probably haven't heard this. You're probably getting this right from me. From the time this leaves my mouth to the time we get this to California, turned around and onto the internet, is going to be about 40 minutes. So the only way I get scooped on this is if somebody hits me in 40 minutes. But the current plan right now, Tom Aspinall versus Surreal Gane. Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready?
We're ready. We're ready, Chael.
For the interim championship.
Ah! He better be wrong. He better be wrong about this. Tom Aspinall versus Ciryl Gane for the interim championship. First of all, I'm going to get into the rest of the news, but then I'm going to get back to where I think Chael may be stretching some truth. I think Chael has heard, but then again, yes, the day before, Chael announced that Jon Jones, Tom Aspinall was fully agreed. So I just don't know what to believe on Chael's. I don't know what Chael's saying. I don't know which one of his breaking news that he's announced for his YouTube page is going to be the thing to believe. But just the day before this announcement that he now is hearing that they're going to do Tom Aspinall versus Ciryl Gane for the interim title, he's saying, I'm confident enough to tell you the fight is done between Jon Jones and Tom Aspinall. The fight is agreed all the way down to the date. Jon Jones did not duck this fight. I wish he did. I'd love to bury him. We're going to pick apart some Chaelisms in some of these statements in a second. But then Ariel Helwani said this. This is not Ariel Helwani. It will go to him in a second. Listen up to what Ariel Helwani said about Chael's statement.
So I do believe that Chael said it's a done deal down to the date, right? Tom Aspinall versus Jon Jones. That's essentially what he said. My understanding is, am I wrong? Did you guys see the same thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. My understanding is not quite accurate. Now, here's the thing. Here's what I understand. My understanding is if this fight doesn't come to fruition, if for whatever reason it falls apart and we never get to see Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall, the UFC is not to blame.
So this is what Ariel's hearing. So although he says, this is him correcting the news of this that Chael seems to have broken, which is that the fight is done between Jon Jones and Tom Aspinall, what Ariel is hearing is that that's not correct. We still don't have that fight done, and it's not going to be on the UFC if the fight is not done. This is what Ariel's sources are telling him. So it's good to have two different sources here. It's never good to just base your news on Chael Sonnen's words, okay? It never is. So it's good to have a secondary source here. I'm not saying it's good to just trust Ariel's words as well, but he seems to confirm at least maybe the idea that Aspinall versus Gane is an idea from the UFC that is being floated around.
The UFC has, in my opinion, well, excuse me, I'll take that back. The UFC has, based on the conversations that I've had, not in my opinion, but what I'm reading and surmising and what's being told to me is they have made every effort in very good faith to make this fight happen. Now, obviously, when fights don't come to fruition, there's a multitude of reasons as to why.
I don't like this language about Tom Aspinall versus Jon Jones. I don't like this type of language. It really makes me worry for whether or not that fight's actually going to happen.
Why fights don't happen.
There's DIY.
Shut up!
And there's doing it.
I've never done anything because an advert told me, I swear to God. Either way.
In my opinion, if this fight doesn't happen, it's not because of the UFC. It's not because of Tom Aspinall as well.
So who's it fucking because of then, Ariel? What are your sources telling you that is the reason that this fight still hasn't been made or signed? As Jon Jones tries to stall his way to the longest heavyweight championship reign in UFC history, which he's not far off of, by the way. What's it telling you, Ariel?
I think ultimately who will decide whether or not this fight happens or not is Jon Jones. Now, that's not some big breaking news, but I say that to say...
We knew it.
Yes, if Jon wants the fight to happen today, and I don't mean like the fight to actually be fought today, but like done deal today, it could be a done deal today. It's up to him, and it's always been up to him. Now, for a while, you could have said, all right, they have to meet whatever number, right? That 30 million was thrown out. Whatever that number is, Rogan walked it back. I had heard the same number, whatever.
So that was a legitimate number that had been heard, the 30 million that Jones was asking for.
Point is, I believe that the UFC has met all the demands in a very favorable way for both guys. They both have demands.
Now, Aspinall's demand is give me Jon Jones. So they're trying to meet that demand for Aspinall. And obviously he's asking for some few million, I would imagine, as well, because there is a management on the side of Aspinall that's not going to let him get completely ripped off in this biggest fight of all time. So I imagine Aspinall's demands are like, dude, give me a couple million, would you be? Come on. And Jon Jones is like, give me 30 mil. And then the UFC, again, as Ariel has stated, and you know it's crazy when Ariel is saying the UFC is not at fault for the reason why a big matchup is not going to happen. When Ariel was saying that the UFC is meeting Jon Jones's demands, that sounds to me like the UFC has called Jon's bluff. Jon says 30 million like he knows the UFC's never going to offer him that, while he stalls out the longest heavyweight championship reign in UFC history. And now the UFC has met him there and called his bluff. I guess now we're still not any closer to getting that matchup. So the UFC is actually willing to pour out the money for this. And I reckon, and Ariel does discuss this, but I'm not going to use all of his footage. Go check out what he has to say. He does a 19-minute segment on this. He discusses in this video that the reason why the UFC are so willing to do this is because they don't want to be seen as the promotion that doesn't get any of the big fights made. Especially because right now in boxing, all of the big fights are getting made. Bivol versus Bertabiev, you know, they had Fury Usyk. They also had, what else have they got? They got Terence Crawford versus Canelo coming up. They're actually getting the big fights made. They've got that whole tournament with Teofimo Lopez and Devin Haney and Ryan Garcia and Rolly Romero's there as well. Shout out to Rolly Romero. They're getting the big fights made in boxing, and the UFC doesn't want to be left behind by saying, oh, we didn't get Jones Aspinall made. We didn't get Ngannou versus Jones made either. So they're fumbling a lot of these massive matchups that they should be getting done. And they don't want that. So they were actually maybe willing to meet Jon Jones at some sort of like comfortable middle ground, or even see his request of 30 million. But we're still not any closer to getting Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall. Now, Aspinall announced, and maybe it is Jones versus Aspinall, but we're just going to see it in November. In MSG, which I could so definitely see. That Jones's final statement, his final request in order to fight Tom Aspinall is to have it in MSG, which is where all of Jones's fights have been. It's in his home state. Maybe he knows a lot of the people in the commission there because he's been fighting for a few decades now. You know he wants any kind of advantage here that he can possibly get. And also it'd make Tom Aspinall have to wait even longer. And Jones is used to taking time away from the sport and coming back and performing. Tom Aspinall isn't. And this just could lead to frustration in Tom Aspinall while Jones does whatever he wants and starts training camp whenever he wants. And this could maybe cause some kind of mental warfare maybe. But Tom Aspinall announced this at the start of his YouTube video.
I know everyone wants fight news. News. But I do know what's happening. I have had meetings with the UFC, as we know. I have been sworn to secrecy for a little bit. So stay tuned, stay up with the channels, stay up with the UFC channels, of course, as always, as you guys always do. But there will be news coming, hopefully, very, very soon. But if you're going to ask me, I can't give the answer right now. But stay tuned, it's coming, it's coming.
He doesn't sound too happy about it, though. This is the thing that I heard. And a lot of people said this in the comments of this very video. Jones is retiring, isn't it? Because it doesn't sound like, and even look like, there's no cheeky wink and a smirk from Tom Aspinall here. Like, don't worry, that big fight's going to get made soon. Sworn to secrecy about what's next. We know it's Jones versus Aspinall if it is Jones versus Aspinall. And this is the annoying part, because now Tom, and he even had to disclose this at the start of this video, sometimes I'll just be going through YouTube and I'll see, oh, what the fuck is Tom Aspinall doing now on YouTube? You know? And it's really kind of hurting Tom's stock now. How much Jones has been ducking for so long and stalling out the fight and stalling out the negotiations and being just an absolute coward about this whole ordeal, which I never thought I could say about Jones, but here I am. It feels like we're at a point now where people are just like, oh, Tom's fucking doing another fucking TikTok filter test for his DNA, and He's trying to... I literally watched a video. I don't know if he did it in this video or not. This is what Tom's... can I crush an apple? Oh my God, man. I'm never getting YouTube Premium, but Guinness. I don't even drink. You know what I mean? Useless advert. Can I crush an apple? Is a YouTube video that Tom Aspinall's doing. I wonder if I can fold up a saucepan or something. What about this rock? Like, this is what Tom is resorting to keep himself busy while his career is being effectively stalled into oblivion by an undisputed champion that doesn't want to take on his top contender. This is where we're at right now in the sport. And it hurts because Tom should just be breezing through in the prime of his career. He's still 32 years old at heavyweight, so I don't think he's lost any kind of prime. But it's just, we're not getting it. You know what I mean? We're just not getting the big fight. And Jones seems to be stalling it out even more. Maybe the announcement is that we're going to see it in November in MSG. There could be a chance of that. But Chael seems to be thinking, maybe he announced it. Maybe this is actually Chael instead of just fucking bamboozling the press, because Ariel has kind of confirmed that that's what he's hearing as well. Maybe Chael announced this and then the UFC said, don't fucking say that shit. It might not happen. And then Chael's gone, oh, my bad. And then all of a sudden he has to now announce, okay, well, maybe it isn't that. And now he's coming out on YouTube and saying, oh, it's going to be Tom Aspinall versus Cyril Gane. It better not be for the interim title, though. And I don't know why Cyril Gane is getting another opportunity like this. That's something I very much hate about this. So if Tom Aspinall is going to be fighting Cyril Gane, take the fucking belt off Jon Jones, and it should be for the undisputed title. That's bottom line. Without any doubt whatsoever, you can't have Tom Aspinall defend the interim belt. I think maybe Chael has put that bit in there because he has been autistically harping on the fact that the interim belt, you know, Chael was saying that once Jones fights Miocic, the interim belt's going to be gone. And he's just been going off about that. And once Jones beats Miocic and his hand is raised, Tom Aspinall will no longer be the interim champion. And he seems to have this sort of like personal vendetta about there just being those two belts. But he needs to aim that vendetta at Jon fucking Jones, dude. That's what he needs to do. So no chance in any way the UFC will humiliate themselves again and have Tom Aspinall versus Cyril Gane for an interim title. Undisputed or nothing. It's the only way forward here if we're not going to get a Jones-Aspinall fight. And fuck Cyril Gane, man. I honestly want to say that as well. He has gotten such a nice treatment by the UFC here. He's not even like a Gaethje in terms of his entertainment value either. I know he's got a French market audience, but there's no superstardom in Cyril Gane. He's got a following. I don't think it's all that. I don't think Gane is this guy that if he has the belt, we'll be laughing then. Millions and millions of pay-per-views are going to come rolling in. I think Tom Aspinall, Cyril Gane's a big fight. I think Aspinall would beat Cyril Gane. I think if Tuivasa can ever fucking drop you, Aspinall's putting you out in the first round. However, if Aspinall loses, the heavyweight division is fucking cooked forever. And Gane is at the top, who lost to Ngannou, and who lost to Jon Jones easily. And it will live on in the shadow of the people that actually beat him. The health of the heavyweight division depends on Tom Aspinall winning. Maybe not against Jon Jones, although it needs to happen, but they could still be like, yeah, well, Jones was the best, not Ngannou, who's sitting at PFL doing fuck all right now. Remember that guy, Francis Ngannou? Hard to remember sometimes. But instead now, if Cyril Gane's at the top, the whole credibility of the UFC heavyweight division is cooked. Maybe they would run an immediate rematch. Maybe that would be some way around it, but immediately the narrative would be, and I think Jon Jones knows this, so he might be laughing at the fact that Cyril Gane could be an opponent for Tom Aspinall in the future. Jon Jones knows if Gane beats Aspinall, haha, I would have done it easily. I told you, here today, gone tomorrow. It's hard to be at the top for so long. He would have some like statement about that. And if Tom Aspinall, heaven forbid, takes Cyril Gane to late in the first round or the second round before finishing him, all of a sudden, Jon Jones is also going to say, and all the fans of Jon Jones are going to say, these gay guys are going to say, Jones did it better. You know, he didn't last a second against Jon Jones. Look how much better he did against Tom. I didn't see Gane land all those inside low kicks on Jon Jones when they fought. You know that's going to be the narrative. So it is what it is. I hate this. But it is what it is. Maybe we will be seeing Tom Aspinall versus Cyril Gane. I hope not. I hope we're just stalling this till November. That's the hope and prayer here. That we are just going to get this in MSG. As sad as that is to wait another fucking 5 months. 6 months. 7 months for this matchup. November. If we're going to wait another 7 months for this matchup, as sad as that is, I'd rather it than see Aspinall, Cyril Gane in the meantime. Because if that's in the meantime, there should be no more Jon Jones. Fuck off. Fucking retire. No one gives a fuck about you. You'll be remembered as a coward for the rest of your fucking career. And a PED cheat as well. But I'd rather the Jones fight to be delayed than never happen. But you can't keep Tom waiting like this. But Cyril Gane's on a fucking 1-fight win streak of bullshit. He robbed Volkov. And he looked shit in that fight. Right back into a title shot. Oh, sorry you lost and got and lost to, what's his name? Francis Ngannou. Oh, you beat Tuivasa in a war? Here's Jon Jones. Oh, you know, you bounced back against... Who did he bounce back? Maybe he's on a 2-fight win streak now. Maybe I've got the order of things wrong. I'm not too sure. But, now you've beat another fat guy in Sergey Spivak. Time for another massive opportunity for Cyril Gane. I remember there was some kind of discussion for him fighting for some kind of interim belt, or he was even protesting that he should be given a title shot next. Robbing Volkov don't prove nothing to me, man. It doesn't. Volkov won that fight, so I don't like that Gane is getting all these countless opportunities to just constantly get his chance at heavyweight gold. It doesn't make any sense, but there you go. Like and subscribe. Some good news at the start, some bad news at the end, but here's hoping we do get Ilia Topuria versus one of these guys at UFC 317. And it seems incredibly likely that we're going to as well. All parties included. So, see you later. Goodbye. Toodle pip. Yeah.